It's race week and teams will be bringing the final upgrades for the season. An update on the Flexi-Wings has been given, and Mick speaks out about sitting out another season. Do consider subscribing. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Having missed out on a full-time contract, Zhou Guanyu is searching for a path to stay in the F1 paddock. According to the latest reports, Zhou is close to becoming Ferrari's reserve driver. Although the end of Zhou's Sauber spell was confirmed by Gabriel Bortoledo's announcement, the consensus for months was that his days at Hinwil were numbered. Bottas and Bortoledo were always the leading contenders to sign a 2025 Sauber contract. In this context, Zhou has been exploring alternatives for some time. As the 25-year-old explained earlier this year, staying active in the F1 paddock is his priority. "At the moment, I don't want to be in other series yet," he explained in Monza. "Because I feel like I'm still in a period that if I can stay in F1 or make a comeback if I don't have a seat, there will still be chances to show what I've got." It is common for drivers who lose their seats to become reserve or third drivers. Zhou's teammate, Valtteri Bottas, is expected to reunite with Mercedes in this role. Similarly, Zhou Guanyu is understood to be negotiating with Ferrari to become their reserve driver from 2025. A new report from Courier.it reveals that Fred Vassar's team could welcome the Chinese driver into their ranks next season. Considering that it was Fred Vassar who signed Zhou to Sauber in 2022, there is already a strong platform for negotiations. Even as securing a Sauber contract extension became increasingly unlikely, Zhou was confident that other options were at his disposal. In this sense, it is not a complete surprise there is clear path forward has been established. Becoming a Ferrari driver is an attractive alternative, especially in a role where the 25-year-old can contribute to simulator and development work. Though nothing is confirmed at this stage, talks between Zhou Guanyu and the Scuderia are worth following in the coming weeks and months. While he fights for the Formula 2 crown, Isaac Hadjar is keeping a watchful eye on developments as Red Bull evaluates its Formula 1 driver lineups. Officially, Sergio Perez was confirmed alongside Max Verstappen at the Milton Keynes-based squad, while Yuki Tsunoda was announced as staying at RB, and Liam Lawson is widely expected to be given a seat, as he has been impressing lately as Daniel Ricciardo's replacement. However, Perez has scored only 48 points in the last 15 Grand Prix compared to Verstappen's 257, and his consistent underperformance has led Red Bull to pursue other avenues for the future, which could entail promoting Lawson to the main outfit, or a shock hire in rookie Franco Colapinto bypassing RB to join Verstappen in his first full F1 season. The Red Bull Junior team's leading driver, Hadjar, has been contending for the F2 title and is hoping that the situation will pan out favorably. "I would say my chances are alive at least," the Frenchman tells Autosport. "Obviously, it's just not down to me. There's a lot going on at RB and Red Bull, anything can happen. And obviously, I'm next in line, so that's just a fact. I don't know what decisions they're gonna take, but hopefully I'm here and trying to be ready for next year in any case." Hadjar's case may be helped by Colapinto and Oliver Behrman impressing on their F1 cameos this year, despite their inexperience, given he had been outperforming both of them in the feeder series. "It shows that our generation is good," the 20-year-old claims. "For a while, we thought that experience was the main thing, and then you can't jump in and beat the guy that has 10 years in F1. But in fact, you can. If you're fast, you're fast." So they did good for us, showing what the F2 grid can produce going to F1. Yet, Hadjar willingly admits he wouldn't necessarily be able to perform at that same level due to having very little F1 testing experience, despite his extensive use of Red Bull's quite shockingly close to real-life simulator. "I think if I had to jump into an F1 car right now, it would be much more difficult than it was for Ollie or Liam," he says. "My experience so far in F1 has been 3 FP1s, and the run plans are always quite limited with laps." Colapinto has already scored twice for Williams, and Hadjar begrudgingly acknowledges Red Bull is looking for a driver that's fast, and he proves that he's fast, while keenly pointing out, "I've been in the Red Bull program for 3 years. I'm second in F2. I'm the reserve for the team." A brief, "that's how it is," speaks volumes as to the youngster's opinion regarding the Colapinto avenue. Hadjar now has 2 rounds to go in the 2024 F2 season in Qatar and Abu Dhabi to grab the title, and most importantly convince Red Bull he's deserving of a 2025 seat. After an underwhelming maiden campaign with High-Tech, which he concluded only 14th in the standings, Hadjar has claimed 4 wins so far this year. I just found myself much more comfortable working with Campos than at that time with High-Tech, he explains. I had a great season in F3 with High-Tech, really good memories. But then going into F2, working with different people, I just didn't match at all and just struggled the whole year. I had speed at times, but I have to say I could have had a much better season. I made quite a few mistakes. So I would say I improved a lot on maximizing the results, maximizing the potential, and just doing fewer mistakes. And then obviously the overall package has been much better. However, Hajar has been hampered by a string of disappointing results of late, losing the championship lead following pointless Monza and Baku rounds. He suffered a slow pit stop and a sluggish start in Italy before crashing out from the Azerbaijan qualifying session, which impacted his whole weekend. We had a really tough season so far, with too many downs and mechanical failures, he concedes. Looking back at my championship, I felt like every time we had a good weekend, we were on the podium on Sunday or winning. So that's why I'm really happy about my performance. I felt I always maximized what I had, and that's pretty much how I made my points really on Sunday. He's not wrong, having scored no fewer than 145 of his 165 points in feature races. Regardless, what if Hajar doesn't get that F1 seat next season and needs to spend the year as a reserve driver for Red Bull's teams? I mean, I would not be okay with that, obviously, because you want to drive, Hajar asserts. But if that is what it has to be, then I'm going to do it and think ahead. David Coulthard believes it remains to be seen whether Ferrari are getting a prime Lewis Hamilton when he joins the Scuderia for F1 2025. Hamilton will leave Mercedes after more than a decade together after this season, switching to join Scuderia Ferrari for the F1 2025 campaign. Hamilton's move to Ferrari proved one of the big bombshells of the offseason prior to F1 2024, with the 7-time F1 world champion calling time on his incredibly successful tenure at Mercedes. Indeed, since joining the Brackley-based squad in 2013, he and Mercedes created the most successful driver-team partnership in F1 history, as Hamilton racked up 6 titles to add to his 2008 McLaren victory. But, with Mercedes unable to challenge Red Bull since the start of the current ground effect regulations which began in 2022, Hamilton has opted for a fresh challenge by switching to Ferrari and lining up alongside the highly rated Charles Leclerc for what will be a formidable task in adjusting to life with a new team and dynamic. Victories at Silverstone and Spa-Francorchamps this season have returned Hamilton to the top step of the podium after 2 years without a victory, but the British driver has struggled for form alongside George Russell, to the point where he has struggled to hide his disappointment, particularly in qualifying. Appearing at the Red Bull showrun in Galway, Ireland over the weekend, David Coulthard spoke to PlanetF1.com about a variety of topics, including how Hamilton might fare at Ferrari in his first season with Maranello. It's an interesting question because Lewis has got nothing to prove. He's a 7-time world champion, Coulthard said. He could have been 9 or 10, because he's been pretty close on other occasions. I personally don't think it's about how many titles you get that defines how great a driver you are. I know the history books. They need that, don't they? They need him to have 8 so he can be undisputed champion of the world. But whatever he does, there'll be someone comes along and betters it in the future, because every generation should be better. Otherwise, we would not have evolved as humans. So it's not about trying to cast what he's achieved. But the extent of the challenge facing Hamilton can't be underestimated. It's his first time driving an F1 without Mercedes power, as well as for a non-British-based team. On top of that, Hamilton has grown accustomed to being the top dog in a team, a dynamic which he will have to earn again at Ferrari by beating the much-loved Leclerc. But such a challenge hasn't put Hamilton off, although Coulthard said it remains to be seen whether or not Ferrari is getting the 7-time F1 world champion revitalized and back at his best, or whether his outright speed has started to dip with age. I suspect the move was slightly emotional and in a frustrated place. Some relationships over time become a bit stale, Coulthard said. He obviously saw the opportunity at Ferrari a bit like, I guess, Mercedes when they brought Michael Schumacher back. They thought they were getting the Michael of his Ferrari era, and then they found out they just got a good Michael. Ferrari may end up just getting a good Lewis. A good Lewis is still pretty handy, but he's been consistently outperformed by George this year. Maybe not in the championship points table, but in terms of qualifying and that. What I lacked in my career was that qualifying speed. If I look at the sum of the fastest drivers, your Mikas, Kimis, Michaels, and Ayrtons, and whoever else fits into that, these guys just have speed. the minute they lose that little bit of speed. I'm not a big football fan, but I hear the analogy about a striker losing a yard. The thing that allowed them to get there and put the ball in the back of the net was they were just that wee bit quicker. The minute they lose that speed, they're still brilliant, but they're not as brilliant as they were. So Lewis may well not quite deliver what he's hoping for, because first of all, he's got to outqualify Charles. I think Charles at 26-27, he's still pretty handy, and that may make it difficult for Lewis. Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur admitted to frustration at the wait regarding the decision from the FIA on Flexi-Wing developments earlier this season. Vasseur said Ferrari opted to not pursue that area of the car in case it was found to be an illegal part. But with the solution the FIA proposed of cameras being implemented to closely monitor front wing flexing from Belgium onwards, he admitted Ferrari lost development time as a result. The debate about the amount of flexing in front wings to gain downforce is one of several technological arguments that has reared its head this season, with a technical directive introduced at the Belgian Grand Prix that would add camera monitoring and extra measurement dots to front wings to ensure they were not flexing beyond the regulated amount at speed. This meant Ferrari opted against developing that area of the car further in case it was found to be against the regulations, having passed static tests, but Vasseur admitted this resolution cost them time in that respect. He did acknowledge, though, that the restrictions in place because of the cost cap means that teams have to allocate their resources wisely. There was frustration because at one stage we were waiting for the decision of the FIA when they installed the cameras from the Belgian GP, Vasseur said to Motorsport.com. We were convinced that it will go for the no-go, and it went for the go, so probably we lost 1 or 2 months. It's difficult because with the cost cap you have to make your choices. It means that if you are convinced that it won't be allowed and you have start to develop something, then it's costing you a time in the wind tunnel. But it was our decision. Given the impact it would have on the cars, and with each team having approached their front wing differently, FIA Director of Single-Seaters Nicolas Tombazis said there is set to be a longer-term solution to this phenomenon, but that changing the regulations suddenly would have been a bit knee-jerk from the governing body on this particular issue. Because the front wing gets loaded in different ways, we cannot predict it easily in the regulations, Tombazis said. As no two wings have exactly the same loading pattern, it is very difficult to come with a proper test. So, as these rules have been around since 2022, we felt it was a bit knee-jerk to suddenly say that for 2025 we were going to change it, or indeed change something for 2024. But we are using this information we're gathering to perhaps lead us to something a bit more effective for 2026. Charles Leclerc has led the support of F1's decision to get rid of the fastest lap bonus point and said it wasn't really rewarding a particular skill. Having introduced a single bonus point for putting in the fastest lap of the race in 2019, the FIA has opted to drop it for the 2025 season. The announcement of the decision to do so came just after RB driver Daniel Ricciardo took the bonus point off Lando Norris in Singapore, allowing Red Bull teammate Max Verstappen to keep a bigger title advantage, but the drivers have generally been in support of the decision. Leclerc said it was not a reward for a skill, but instead dependent on fortune. I don't think that's a bad thing, Leclerc said to media, including PlanetF1.com. Honestly, I've always felt like this point was very superficial, because it always depends on your race situation, and it wasn't really rewarding a particular skill in a way, because it was more about finding yourself in a lucky position where you call pit stop and do that fastest lap. So I think it's good that it's been taken off. George Russell was another who supported the move, remarking that he always thought the bonus point was a bit pointless. It would always be the driver who was having a tough race in the top 10 would pit, put new tires on, and gain the extra point, Russell said. So I never really saw the benefit of that, so sort of glad to see that that's gone. Carlos Sainz spoke in similar terms, suggesting that it is not going to the person who is actually fastest. I always was of the opinion that it was a not needed point in the point system of Formula One, mainly because of how it is achieved, he said. Right now, that point goes to the one that has a free pit stop 1 lap to the end of the race. So it's not showing who is the fastest guy in the race, and he deserves 1 point for being the fastest guy. It's a point that goes to the guy that by chance, or by luck, or by race situation, has a free pit stop at some point of the race. Sainz suggested an alternative, and that would be to give a point for the driver on pole. Pole position is something that, at least in Formula One, is given a lot of value, Sainz, who has qualified on pole 6 times in his career, said. Qualifying is something that media people keep a lot of importance to know, and obviously as drivers in qualifying, we like being the fastest because it shows you've maybe have done the cleanest lap. You've taken maybe more risks. You've put everything on the line to go on pole. And a point for that in a tight field makes sense. In a field where only one car is going to get all the pole positions makes less sense. But in the ideal scenario of a tight field and one guy going for it in qualifying and getting that pole position, I think it could make more sense than the fastest lap of the race. Mick Schumacher has recently shared his feelings on social media, indicating that he is currently facing a significant setback in his career, and it is becoming more and more likely that he will not be returning to the Formula One grid anytime soon. This situation comes after a season where he was considered a possible candidate to join Alpine or take over Logan Sargent's position at Williams, but now, sadly, it seems his chances to re-enter Formula One are dwindling fast. The only seat left uncontracted for the 2025 season belongs to VCarb, and with recent reports suggesting that Valtteri Bottas may be making a comeback to Mercedes in a reserve role, it looks increasingly difficult for Schumacher to find a place. This reserve driver position has been held by Mick for the last 2 seasons after he left Haas, and with Bottas potentially taking that role, it further complicates Mick's prospects. Even though he has not been competing in Formula One, Mick has been keeping himself busy by participating in the World Endurance Championship with Alpine this season. However, on his social media on Sunday, he expressed that this current phase in his career represents just a part of the story for him, and he is determined to rise above it and continue his professional journey. He shared a thoughtful message on Instagram, reflecting on how life does not always unfold according to our plans, and that it can be challenging to deal with setbacks. He emphasized that every obstacle presents an opportunity for learning and personal growth, and he believes he will come back even stronger. Mick also conveyed his gratitude for the support he has received from his fans, saying it truly means a lot to him. Mercedes team principal TOTO Wolff has publicly expressed his wish that Mick could have had a chance with Williams earlier in the season. However, the team decided to promote from within, opting to place Franco Colapinto in the cockpit to replace Sargent after the summer break instead. Recently, there was also speculation about Mick potentially driving for Sauber, but that possibility was eliminated when the team announced they would be signing Gabriel Bortoleto, who is currently leading in the Formula 2 Championship, for the 2025 season. Sauber's Chief Technical Officer and Chief Operating Officer, Mattia Binotto, confirmed that Mick was indeed considered as a strong candidate to partner with Nico Hülkenberg for the next season. He stated in discussions with the media, including PlanetF1.com, that they had several conversations regarding Schumacher and acknowledged that he has many strengths, as well as a few weaknesses. But he believed Mick would have made a good choice for the team. Nevertheless, Binotto explained that after careful deliberation, the decision was made to go with Gabriel instead. Thanks for watching. I'll see you around.